Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of me thinking I can actually give art critique. Okay, so today I wanted to talk a bit about the messy online world of art critique, which is something I see frequently debated online, and you probably often see posts going viral in which people seem to get really harsh and unnecessary critique. The reality is that art critique is a very difficult topic to fully cover, because critique can be so subjective based on the person, but I think it's important to talk about just basic rules and etiquette when trying to offer somebody critique and how best to take it. The thing about critique is that it's really important to get critique in order to improve as an artist, but at the same time, getting unwanted or unnecessarily harsh critique can kind of crush your spirit when you're first starting out, or even if you're more experienced, getting critique that's really unkind and degrades your art style usually just completely backfires and has no helpful effect whatsoever. And in an age where so many people online are more than happy to be nasty armchair critics, how do you tell the difference between well-meaning critics and people who are just trying to get a rise out of you? And additionally, how do you offer critique to somebody without it being misconstrued as possibly hateful and not very well-meaning? Well, let's talk about it. Okay, so the first thing some of you may be wondering, if you're not very familiar with art Twitter or just art in general, is why are artists so freaking sensitive to critique, right? Well, the thing is that most critique online comes from trolls, and so when you're an artist online, it's really hard to tell what might actually be somebody who genuinely wants to help you improve versus somebody who's just envious or having a really bad day and just wants to spew very nasty things in an attempt to make themselves feel better about themselves. And the other big problem I see a lot with critique is that a lot of people usually just tell somebody what they did wrong versus giving them strategies to actually improve. So it's kind of hard because then you just see everything somebody hated without really any actual decent input on what you can do to make it better for next time. It ends up just serving to hurt people's confidence in their work instead of giving them something they can actually work towards and giving them something tangible to improve upon. Okay, so how do you tell good critique from mean criticism as an artist online? So good critique will usually include an actual strategy you can implement on how to improve. So if somebody is critiquing the way you did a hand, for example, somebody who's just trying to bring you down might say, like, the hand looks wrong, the hand looks bad, that hand is way too long, that hand is way too stubby. You get the point. But somebody who's actually trying to offer you real input on how you can make it better might say, that hand looks very flat, it doesn't look very dynamic, maybe next time curve the joints. So that way the hand looks more realistic, it looks like it flows more naturally. They'll offer you actual pointers you can implement, so that way you can try to actually change the thing that they're pointing out. Also, here's just a pointer. If the person who's giving you criticism doesn't actually have any artwork of their own posted anywhere, don't take this the wrong way or anything, but I would just be a little bit skeptical on how much you can trust them. Not just because of the lack of experience, but because these people also have a tendency to be the ones who just want to go around criticizing people without A, any actual real foundations upon which their criticism is based on, and B, it just does not come off as very well-meaning, because instead of it being an artist trying to help another artist, it's a person who just goes around giving crap criticism to people, maybe because they're envious or maybe because they have nothing better to do. And I mean, if their replies, if you check them on Twitter, seem to indicate a history of criticizing artists, especially if they're not giving any helpful critique and you can't find any art of their own, you should just completely disregard it, because the person is probably a troll and you should not take anything they say to heart. Trust me, I've taken stuff like that to heart, and it never actually helps you in the long run. Additionally, this might be more of a kind of me thing, but I'm kind of the opinion that if somebody offers you criticism that involves fundamentally changing something about your art style, then you should seriously consider whether or not it's something you actually want to change. So something like the way you draw eyes, or maybe the specific way you do proportions, as long as it's intentional. You know, I feel like those things are very unique to the way somebody might draw their art. It might be a facet of their art style. And if somebody's offering you criticism and they're saying, I don't like the way you do eyes, then you should ask yourself, is this something you really want to change, or are they just asking you to fundamentally change a part of your art style that makes you you? And I think if somebody's trying to get you to change your actual style, then you might want to take their critique with a grain of salt. Not because it's necessarily bad advice, but because your style is something very unique to you. It's something you develop. It's what sets you apart from everybody else. And you don't want to be changing things that make your work unique, that just make it look like somebody else's work, basically. So I'm not saying all the advice that involves changing stuff in your style is bad, but just it's something you should really just keep in mind if it's something you actually want to change, or if it's something that just seems like somebody doesn't like a certain aspect of your style versus it just not being drawn well. And as always, if there's any insults attached to the criticism, you can just flush that one down the toilet. It doesn't mean anything. If somebody can't offer criticism without throwing in an insult, they're just trying to insult you. So after that, you might be wondering, understandably, how do I even give good criticism? And how do I make sure somebody's not going to misconstrue it and think I'm trying to insult their work instead of trying to help them? So the big thing is always, always, always offer a tangible solution. That is the best way to help the person realize that you're trying to help them instead of just trying to bring them down. Don't tell somebody that their art looks bad or wrong. Instead, tell them that you think their style might look even better if they try implementing your suggestion. And if you don't have like an actual solution to how they can fix the problem that you mentioned, and you're just saying, this looks bad, I don't like it, then I would hold off on hitting reply to that one because it's not going to help either of you in the long run. When it comes to criticism, I really recommend finding ways to improve upon the existing art style instead of trying to make it look like an adaptation of somebody else's style. So for some styles, you might see that their work is more like cartoony. So you might think, hey, thicker lines might look great on this artwork because it'll just help it look even more cartoony. It'll help them really lean into their style. That's a perfect example of really helpful criticism because it's not trying to fundamentally change their style. It's trying to help them exaggerate it and really lean into it more. That's a criticism that I feel really would help me best, and I think would help a lot of people best, because you're not telling them that they did something wrong or that they need to really change what they're doing. Instead, you're offering ways to improve upon what's already there without them losing the core aspects of what makes their style unique to them. And you know, wording is always everything when it comes to any form of criticism, be it on art, videos, anything else. If you make it sound very mean and you're throwing in insults, or you're just saying words like bad, not good, wrong, it's really hard to look at that criticism and take it objectively because it just comes across as very hurtful. I think everybody's a lot more receptive to criticism when it's framed in a lot more positive light, when you're using very positive and encouraging language. So if you're going to offer any criticism, definitely try to word it in the most uplifting way possible. Something else that can also be really helpful, not just wording, but is also providing examples such as tutorials or even just images of what you're referring to. A lot of people, when it comes to art, they're going to learn best visually. So if you can provide concrete examples of what you're trying to get them to improve upon, that will really help because it gives people an actual look at what they can be doing to get better. Oh, and never ever insult what's already drawn. Somebody put a lot of time and effort into that, and if you start out swinging by saying this looks like crap, I'm going to tell you how you can make it look less like crap next time, and nobody wants to hear that. It's not a nice thing to say, and you know, you're not exactly then setting a good foundation about why you're reputable and why this person should trust you. But you started off by saying, I hate this. Just don't start there. Just don't start there. And you have to recognize that some skills like anatomy or shading, they take a lot of time. People can't just improve upon that overnight. You know, it doesn't matter how many times you try to get better at anatomy in a single day. Something that has to be improved on time after time after time. So if you're telling somebody that their anatomy looks janky and you're offering them tips on how to make their proportions more evened out, that's all fine and good, but you just have to recognize that that's something that takes a lot of time to straighten out. Sometimes people are newer artists and they haven't even had time to build up those skills, and a lot of times they'll come naturally as they continue to draw, which is why I say the best way to get somebody to improve is by being encouraging, because the way you improve is by drawing more. And if you're over criticizing stuff or sounding overly harsh, people are not going to want to draw more, and then they're not going to improve because they're not practicing at drawing more. And like, just a note about unwanted criticism, there is a time and a place for criticism. You know, I think somebody who is very adverse to the idea of criticism is not going to be primed to grow, because you need to accept critique in order to get better. But that said, there is most certainly a good time and a good place for doing that. Examples of a bad place for doing that, right under somebody's brand new art post, because people have spent dozens of hours working on that. And if your first reaction upon seeing this brand new posted artwork that somebody just finished up after spending so many hours on it is to critique it and offer criticism, that just leaves such a bad taste in their mouth, because it tells them that you're not seeing all the effort and the time that was put into that work that was already drawn. You're only seeing what you think is wrong with that, and it's so pressing and urgent. You need to tell them right now on this brand new post that they need to fix it. It's just not a good place to be telling people that. Now, a good time to offer criticism is when somebody's just straight up asking for it, because then you know there's no worry about it being unwanted because they're quite literally asking for it. Another good place, I think, is if you DM somebody privately. I mean, obviously, don't come off as weird, but if you're offering somebody pointers privately, you know, I think that would probably be one of the best ways to go about it, especially because then it's no longer a public battle, you know, that they're just trying to help you, which is why they're reaching out to you privately. So I think if you've compiled a list of ways somebody can improve and you really want to tell it to them, then sending them a message might be a really good way to go. As I've said, just keep in mind that, you know, even though people just look like usernames online, they're still real people with feelings. And when you're posting something that you put so much time and emotion into, if somebody's first reaction is to criticize it, you know, point out all the errors you made instead of appreciating what you already made, then, you know, nobody appreciates that. It just takes you down a peg, and I would really recommend all of you not do that to anybody, no matter what they're making. There's a lot of good ways to offer helpful critique, and sometimes I think it's kind of really well appreciated. You know, if somebody's taking the time out of their day to offer you helpful feedback, but you have to make the clear distinction between helpful feedback and criticism. And there's a time and a place for helpful feedback, but unnecessary criticism is never wanted, especially when it's right below something somebody has just spent a lot of time on. I mean, the reality is that nobody really likes hearing critique, no matter what you're doing, no matter what field you're in. Nobody likes hearing it, but it's really important for growth because it's hard to sometimes see your own errors, and you need somebody else to point out to you where there's room for growth. You know, especially in art, it's important to be open to criticism from reliable users in the community or other artists who actually have a background in what they're talking about, because they're the ones who are going to best be able to point out to you what you should hone on if you want to become an even better artist. But again, when offering criticism, it's very important to point out what somebody can improve upon while using good, positive language, because the whole point is that you're supposed to be helping them become an even better artist, not discouraging them from even making art in the future. Yeah, like in general, unwarranted, nasty criticism is never called for. It's never appreciated. Nobody ever wants to see that. And I don't understand why people want to give that. You know, I guess I've just never been able to be able to understand why people will just like post these nasty replies online to anything, just like constantly bringing people down. I guess I just don't get it, especially when people try to frame it as like, oh, I'm just saying this to help you. And then it's stuff you either can't change or it's just so nasty that you look at it and you're like, dang, do they really need to say that? So nobody ever likes receiving that. And if you are really passionate about trying to help somebody, just keep in mind what you're saying and how you're saying it so you can make sure it comes across in a manner that the person will be receptive to and understand that it comes from a good place and you're trying to help them instead of trying to discourage them or make them feel insecure about their work. But yeah, if you'd like any tips from me and what bit of kind of knowledge I have, just ask away in the comments like always, and I'll try to get back with the best info I can. I mean, I learned a lot by asking other people and by watching YouTube tutorials, so I really will try to help if you have specific questions that I can maybe help with. You know, I'm always happy to encourage people to pursue art. It makes me happy when people say that I've inspired them to get back into it. Like, that just makes me happy. So if you have questions, you know, fire away. But yeah, I guess that's really all from me. If you want to stick around, then I will tell you more about my terrible flight experience, because you already knew there was going to be one because I just said I went on a trip. But yeah, happy drawing, and thank you guys for watching. Okay, see ya. Okay, hi. Thanks for sticking around. I really appreciate it. If you can't already guess, yeah, this is about my flight. And what's really funny about this is that I made a video about this time last year, one of my first videos that was so bad I can't even bring myself to watch it again. But I was basically complaining about one of my flights, and boy did I make the stupid mistake of calling that the worst flight ever, because I have actually topped that, and this is one where it's not just me being a overreactive, anxious flyer. No, this one was legitimately bad. All right, when other people around me think this was a terrible flight, you know it's not just me. Okay, let me set the stage for you. So I made a goal to myself that this year I was going to keep track of every time I flew and see how many times American was late with my flights. Because last year, I want to say I was about 11 for 12 or 13 in terms of 11 out of the 12 or 13 were late. It's not a good record. The only one I had on time last year, I think, was a connection to Charlotte, which, bless the good Lord, that was on time. And it's really funny because then the plane I was catching in Charlotte was delayed, as you already know. But that's besides the point. So as I said, I went home for break this year. It was really nice. But my flight, well, they were both on time, which is a blessing in of itself. I mean, when's the last time that happened? The 4th of never, that's when. So the flight out, the flight home, the flight was good. The flight back here, yeah, that was not so good. So I checked the weather ahead of time, both where I live and here. You know, I was like, oh great, it's gonna be sunny, perfect weather. There is absolutely no reason we should be delayed today. And well, I guess I was right because we weren't delayed, but no. So already this was a bad choice of flight. I took the late flight. We were getting in after 11 p.m. That was without getting back to my room and having to wash my hair and get ready for the school day. It was a stupid move, and I knew walking into the terminal when I saw my gate, and I realized it was going to be like a glorified Greyhound bus for college students, because the only people stupid enough to take a flight this late, you already know, are college students. So that was already an experience in of itself. It was overbooked, again, per usual. You know, if it's not overbooked, then is it really American Airlines? And then the flight itself was generally pretty good until we entered the state where I'm currently in. And it was almost like as soon as we crossed state lines, the plane started bouncing, you know, bit of turbulence. You know, I don't have an issue with turbulence anymore, really. I've flown so much in the last like 2 years. It just does not bother me once we're up in the air. So we were all fine and good. And, you know, it's late. Nobody else is really flying in at this hour. I'm like looking over and I'm like, oh my God, I can see the runway. We're like there. Guess what? We're going to be early. Wow. Words that are never said on an American flight. And yeah, so guess what happened? Yeah, so we're coming in and we're bouncing. When I say bouncing, I don't really mean like up and down. I mean like side to side. I was not aware it was windy. When I got back to campus, people were telling me it was like 40-mile-per-hour wind gusts all day. It was not good. So we are going into land and we're like bouncing side to side. And I'm just looping like the Disney Fantasmic music, because when you don't have internet, it's the only song I can listen to. So I just had it looped on repeat. And I look out and I'm like, Jesus, I will be so happy when we touch the ground and this nightmare is over, because this has been the worst approach in a long time. And guys, it was like a dream. I looked out at the window, like looking out the window, and I'm like, all right, we are getting so close. Like here's the runway, right? Okay, here's the runway. Here's us. We're coming down. We're coming down. I'm like, we're so close. We're gonna make it. And I think I looked away, and I was waiting for the bump of the wheel hitting, and that never came. And I was like, well, what the heck? Aren't we supposed to be on the ground now? And I look outside, and what do I see? Oh, what do I see? We're going back up. We're going back up. It wasn't even a go around, because we actually aborted the landing. We were about maybe 10 feet above the ground. We were hovering right over the runway, and we just aborted and we left. And I think relevant to this is an old plane. I should have taken the earlier Airbus flight. This was a regional jet. It is old as heck. And I'm mentioning this because I did some reading, and it turns out newer planes, like the Boeing and Airbuses, they have auto throttle settings. So when you're doing an abort and landing or a go around, pilots don't have to do anything. This is an older one. So somebody had to take manual control, and my God, we just took off. I mean, that thing just flew right back into the air. I mean, I was just like, my jaw dropped. I think I was just looking outside. And guys, I don't really swear much, but oh my God, the profanity. Ugh, I'm ashamed to admit it, but my God, I was losing it. I mean, it felt like something that it did not feel real. I was like, we were coming in and we're not on the ground. How is this like possible? And everybody else in this plane, and again, these are college students. A lot of these people have not flown much. They're looking around in just like a state of shock. And the pilot's like, yeah, guys, that was dangerous. We're flying around the city. We'll come back. So just like that, the early flight, we're late. We were late because we had to circle around the whole city. And even worse was coming in the second time. You know, the first one was a bit bumpy, but it really wasn't that bad. But the second time, oh my God. I know I exaggerate a bit when it comes to flights. I'm not exaggerating on this one. I swear to God, never in my life did I think we would actually almost crash, because I really feel like that's what almost happened. The whole time we were lining up, I thought for sure we were headed back up to do another aborted landing. I mean, this thing was bouncing side to side. Like, you've ever seen the videos of planes landing in heavy wind? That is exactly what it felt like. And unfortunately, the plane spotter dude was not there. Sadly, he was there earlier, and I'm like, dude, you missed an aborted landing, but it's not important. We were bouncing, and we got back over the runway. I was like, it's not gonna happen. We're not gonna make it this time. The wings getting dangerously close to hitting on my side. I'm like, oh my god, I really, really thought this wasn't gonna end well. And we're like flaring up the whole way, and then right at the last second, I think the pilot just was like, yeah, screw this, smacked the nose down. We bounced a bit, and then we went down the runway so fast, I thought we were going off. It was not fun, and I know that that description does not sound bad, but trust me, like, everybody just seemed really on edge. My legs were like jello, and as soon as we pulled into our gate and people turned off airplane mode, everybody was sending like these giant paragraphs of text to like their friends and family. So that's proof that this one was not just me freaking out. But fun fact, apparently if you have T-Mobile and you do the 1 hour pass, get this, it actually resets if you abort your landing. Because I was like, you know what, I'll pay for internet just to see flight radar and see where we're going in case we divert. And it reset, because I guess we just got so close to touching down, it resets. I was like, let's go, second takeoff, new internet pass. But yeah, that was not fun. I don't know why I'm sharing this. I guess just because like I was terrified. Like, never in my life did I actually think there was a chance that like we'd go off in flames. But this would have been the one. This would have been the one. And props to the pilots for making so that didn't happen. I mean, the captain was Australian. That's probably why. The Aussies know where it's at. But that was scary. This is probably going to take up a lot more of the video than I thought it would, but you know what? It's whatever. I didn't feel like making another video about this directly, so this is where I'm putting it. This is where I'm talking about it. You know, for the like 5 people who appreciate the live updates at the end, this one's for you. But yeah, it's been busy. It's been busy. Definitely feel a lot busier than last year. But you know what? That's okay. It's like the good kind of busy. But yeah, so I think that's about it from me. Oh, if you're still watching, I do have a question for you. I posted this elsewhere, but in case you didn't see it, I am planning on starting the Persona series when I am home for break. So between the Switch titles 3, 4, and 5, if you have a recommendation on which one you'd start with, let me know. I was kind of leaning towards 5 because that's the one that I've just seen the most about and it looks the most interesting to me. But whichever one you think is best, let me know. I will definitely take it into consideration. I want to play all of them if possible, but you know, gotta start somewhere. They're long games. But yeah, so thank you guys for listening to me complain about my flight. From me, it's not going to be Halloween when I post this, but I'll say it anyway. Happy Halloween. All right, thank you guys for watching. Bye bye.